All right, we are here at Purdue's Envision Laboratory with Drew Sumner. Drew, would you like to give us a little introduction as far as what this place is and how it is sort of associated with Purdue?
Sure thing. Thanks for coming down here, Matt. This is the Purdue Envision Center. We are a research computing facility under Purdue's IT administration. And so the majority of our work involves building virtual simulations and training and visualizations for services across the board for the university, internal and external. And so a lot of that ends up being developed with innovative technologies, so specifically virtual reality, augmented reality, and kind of gamified simulation experiences.
So I know of a couple professors that are working with you and doing their augmented reality experiments and so forth.
Right.
And, so it's really cool. So this is not just people in visual effects and games. This is all types of like what other departments are you working with?
Right. So I would think of the work that we do more as an enterprise label. So while we use games and VFX focused tools, most of the work we do revolves around the grant cycle in research and academics. So whether it's a professor who wants to do a very specific focus of research using a peripheral device like a headset or an augmented reality device, then all the way to I need a in my web browser simulation for students to practice this lab, especially with the COVID times that we've been having great success in converting labs from a physical space to a virtual in your browser experience so that students can access especially hazardous materials safely in a virtual scenario that isn't one-to-one with what the hands-on experience would be like, but it gives you the learning experience to practice those concepts and understand the theories involved.
I guess we can just walk into the main room.
Yeah, sure. So this is our physical facility. If you follow me back here to the forge. So this is our forge space. It is a motion capture stage and general purpose open space room. Previously we'd use it for a cave system that actually took up about half of this room. And that's a rear projected display system that tracked your one set of glasses for stereo 3D. It's been a very popular technology through the early 2000s, but we found that we needed to kind of reinvent ourselves for more modern technology that we could experiment with the success we've had in virtual reality. And so this space built into a motion capture stage that we use for many different purposes, everything from converting small lightweight virtual reality devices like the Oculus Go into a full 6 degrees of freedom device, all the way to doing a full performance capture workflow with body tracking, hand tracking, and face tracking. This space over here is one of our pop-up photogrammetry spaces. We've been experimenting more and more with photogrammetry over the years, and most recently gotten into a few projects where we're scanning some interesting artifacts, things from like rocks and twigs, all the way to very delicate glass beadery. A lot of the work we're looking at is, for scanning specifically, is involving preservation or cultural heritage. So getting a 3D scan of this object that only so-and-so has access to physically, that way we can digitize these libraries to give access to more people across the world. And so some of that work has involved traditional photogrammetry, so going to a location and trying to shoot around an object, all the way to cross-polarized photogrammetry off of technology where you're using linear polarizing film and high-powered lighting to cancel out reflections from what you're shooting.
So then you got over here, like if you don't mind me turning this around.
Sure.
It's like what's that all about? Like
Sure thing. So what you're looking at here is a Godox Air 400 flash. So it's a very high-powered ring flash. It's a 400-watt flash. And then what you're seeing mounted on the front of it is a custom 3D printed enclosure for linear polarizing film. And then the camera that's mounted to that very large flash has a circular polarizing lens on it that cancels out the specular reflections coming back from those photos. So if you shoot on something like black velvet here, what you end up with is completely canceling out any kind of reflection back from the flash that's coming into the lens. This is a technique known as void scanning, There's a really awesome guy from ScanSpace, New Zealand, who's helped us out a ton on understanding how we can manipulate the physics of light to achieve these kinds of interesting scanning effects. Essentially gets a perfectly flat albedo image out of the camera.
Gotcha. All right, so here we are. Drew, what's all this crazy stuff?
So what you're looking at here is just kind of a spread of some of the devices that we use. Figured I'd show some of the hardware that we work with here. Dating back to some of the early days of the Google Cardboard and working with putting your phone into a device and how that moved up to an integrated device in the headset, and then how that's evolved over the years into some of these more self-inclusive devices and things like HTC Vive or the Valve Index, or even some augmented reality devices here, like an open source one that you can build yourself called the Project North Star, where it reflects images off the screens in front of your field of view, which is very similar to like the Microsoft HoloLens here. So kind of touching on various devices, we like to explore and see what things work well, what things open up new avenues of research and possibilities for students and researchers, and kind of looking at what things we can develop for and build new training, new simulation, and kind of evolve the kind of work that we're doing.
So this thing is like, this is the HoloLens, right?
That's right.
And this is like $3,500, like
something like that.
Okay.
But yeah, so these devices kind of tell a history of where we've been and where things are going, looking from days where you had to have a secondary device and it wasn't full tracking where you could move around and walk around, to things like this where you have that full ability to walk around but you're still tethered by a cable. And then augmented reality devices where it's self-inclusive, you can wear it and take it out, but the processing power of what's on that device, isn't super strong, so you're not getting like visual effects quality graphics out of that device, but still enough to get 3D representations and overlays on top of what you're seeing. So some of this predates us a little bit, and some of these devices like this Oculus Quest here are things that we have found great success in with our projects, where they're easy to deploy for professors and students and researchers, where it's easy enough to develop for it in a video game engine, and then deployment turns into just, do you have a device? Load the app onto the device. And so in academia especially, you end up with a lot of back and forth on what's the best cost to product ratio on how can I achieve X or Y. You look at a lab full of students, and you say a class of 30 students, and you need 30 of this device, 30 of a computer that can run a nice graphics card to run a high-end simulation for that device. Those costs add up really quickly. And so we like to experiment and find out what the right tool for the job is, even with hardware. So that way you can get the biggest bang for your buck on the experience and the quality of work that we can achieve with that hardware. With that cave system that I mentioned that we used to have, replacing that kind of took down a huge amount of screen real estate that we had, where we would hold seminars, group meetings, training sessions actually at this facility. And so in replacing that, we wanted to kind of still have a large format display that we could use for those purposes, but also serves as a visualization tool. And so this is a 16-panel planar display. It's not anything intended for that high end of virtual production with really low pixel pitch, but for us this serves the great purpose of having a very large format screen that we can fill this whole room full of people, pre-COVID of course, that we could then have presentations, seminars, training sessions, group meetings, and so forth. But it's turned into kind of like our new viz wall of sorts. And so this runs off of a very high-powered machine in a server rack that then also runs all of our motion capture processing and even the streaming into game engines and the associated technologies for that.
And you told me that you tried to do the Mandalorian thing.
Yeah.
Where you hooked it on Unreal, and obviously these monitors, they don't have enough throw, which is a lot of light,
yeah,
and we got a lot of seams, and
oh yeah,
it's not meant for what they're doing. But how was that?
It's an interesting experience. I think that if you have a big screen of any kind, give it a shot. The Unreal end display stuff is really cool. You can get a really convincing result running pretty easily. I think, especially at home, an interesting result is do it on a miniature scale. Use a large monitor and set up your camera to just see that as the background, and you can still run Unreal as long as you have some device that can track where your camera is And so in this case, we obviously have a motion capture stage that can be used to track that position, but you can do it with like an HTC Vive tracker. So if you're set up with a VR device, that's becoming more and more popular to use. And so it's kind of like a frustum seeing through the screen effect. And it's a pretty cool effect to work for a background or, live green screen replacement, so to speak. But yeah, with this specific setup, no, it's not intended for it. So you see quite heavy lines, and yeah, of course, it's not a high nit display for the luminance value, so it's not like we're faking any light. But you could get reflections out of it if that's what you're looking for.
Just something to think about.
Yeah.
We're gonna head over to this table here
sure
and look at some mocap goodies.
So with this motion capture setup, we're running an OptiTrack stage. So the majority of our suits look like this, where they're kind of like spandex, but breathable. So that way, when you're in a suit for a long period of time, you can do acrobatic movements, record lots of animation. But essentially, you're putting these retroreflective dots on top of these surfaces that the cameras then illuminate infrared light at with a LED emitter on each camera. Reflects that back into the camera, and it's able to tell that this is a tracker. And so it's able to triangulate all those positions, and then you get that movement recorded in 3D space. And so with that, we can suit up in various size suits. We can use things like this, which this is an active tracker. So the biggest difference here is that with these retroreflectives, they're not powered. It's just a native or optical way to see the tracker. Whereas with this, when you turn this on, I know that you and I won't be able to see it, but what's happening here is this is emitting infrared light at a very specific frequency. And what that does is then when the computer sees each of these lights reflecting at a specific frequency, we can tell one marker from another. That becomes a bigger issue when you're wearing lots of markers and you're going to hold props with lots of markers, and so you get a lot of mixed signal between one another or label swaps between them. And so this kind of prevents that, or kind of locks in. As long as these markers can be seen, then you know one from the other. So they kind of work well as rigid trackers like this, where I can kind of put a phone in here and use it as a virtual camera. So things like that, where we have options for the type of technology you want to use for the type of capture you want to be running. And so with that, we recently upgraded to a Faceware system. And so this helmet is a HMC that is used for recording your face while you're in the mocap seat. And so it's a very adjustable helmet. It's the Faceware Indie head cam. Uses a GoPro on the front, runs a cable to a transmitter. We had built and designed our own LED light, so that way this gets a good, even, consistent lighting on your face for the GoPro's exposure to keep a good track on what's going on. And then we add our 3 retroreflective markers for the body tracking that still needs to know where your head is. And so then with this solution, we can capture what your eyes, your eyebrows, what your nose is doing, your mouth, down to even your partial lip motions based on a fax-based rig. And so with Faceware, we can capture a pretty decent result in real time and then, retarget that.
With no dots whatsoever.
Exactly, markerless. And so Faceware is a markerless solution. They do allow you to, if you want to, use a grease pencil and dot up to a specific marker set, you can. But that aids you most in offline capture. So if we said, put on the helmet, record the session, and then process it later, markers really assist with that level of tracking. But as a real-time solution, without markers, you can get a decent quality result off of, I believe it's about 36 different float values for what your face is doing in real time.
Now, Unreal just released a crazy demo, which will show some B-roll footage of the
MetaHumans.
metahumans.
Yes.
And that's absolutely nuts. Can that be linked up through this information to the
It
metahuman
has.
software?
And we've done it. So what you're looking at there is a very complicated, super awesome rig built by the 3 Lateral team that Epic Games acquired a couple of years ago. And it has all kinds of crazy controls for everything from like a cheek twist to a cheek bone raise. And so what you want to do is say take those 36 positions that Faceware tracks of an eyebrow going up in the middle and link it to that really high quality rig from MetaHumans. And while we're not using every single controller that's there, we can kind of layer things and add things together to get a better result, more approximate to what that result is giving. And so In comparison, a very popular tool for doing face tracking is actually the iPhone. So if you have an iPhone, I believe it's 10 or newer, it's essentially using a depth camera for emojis, is what it was meant for. And people are using it to capture their face for motion capture. It's a very awesome indie or lower budget piece of technology that this captures a few more places than that, so it's a little bit better quality than the iPhone capture setup. But it's this technology that when you start to work with more real-time effects, things like that MetaHuman come along, where Epic releases for free super high-quality rigs that really elevate what someone at home is able to do with this kind of technology. Because even Faceware here, even though we're using it here on a GoPro, it can use anything as a video feed. So even if you want to sit at home with a webcam and sit at your desk and do your facial animations that way, Faceware can help you with that. And so it's these tools that are kind of democratizing performance capture to be much more accessible for people at home. All right, so what we're looking at here is our new StretchSense gloves. This interface that's running behind us in real time is running the data that's coming off of Evan's glove here. And essentially these are gloves built with stretch sensors in them that just work off of the sensors in the gloves and work over Bluetooth to dongles that then the computer does the computing here. And what you're looking at is the real-time solve off of the brand new Express Calibration mode, which is this really cool new mode StretchSense just put out this week on how you can quickly calibrate to industry-leading finger tracking solutions. And so what I'm going to do back here is I'm going to click on capture, and I'm going to have you do that same setup again where we kind of just go ahead and just wiggle, do a bunch of movements, make some shapes. You'll see as he does more shapes behind him, the hand tracking gets more and more accurate. And now that calibration has been completed, go ahead and just make a couple shapes. So we can see a pretty decent solve result in just 8 seconds there. And so for us, this solution kind of solved the problem that we were having of when you have a motion capture stage that's optical and you're wearing a glove with trackers on it, if you curl your fingers, all of the trackers that were on those fingers just disappear. The cameras can't see them anymore. So then you get a loss in tracking, things get jumpy, jittery. So what this is doing is letting us override that tracking data for the hands with this really, really solid individual finger tracking. And so StretchSense here has an animator software client and a physical glove solution in 2 different sizes. And essentially what it lets us do is combine the best of both worlds, use our full body motion capture and wear these gloves and get our full skeleton down to the finger joints in real-time quality at up to 90 frames per second.
So we're currently a little bit separated from each other for social distancing reason because we have a man with no mask on, but it's the only way we're going to do the mocap. But Drew, would you like to go over what we're seeing?
Yeah, so what you're looking at is Evan here is wearing our Faceware Indie headcam, and it's a GoPro 5 with our own homemade illuminator on his face, where we are in real time capturing without any markers what his face is doing. And so all of these positions you can see in the software behind him in the new Faceware Studio is streaming out this headcam setup to a 3D rig where you can evaluate the quality of what's being tracked and how things are moving. So when we take this data in, we can capture this with the full body, those fingers you were seeing earlier, kind of have the full performance capture workflow set up and stream this onto any character of your choosing. So in this case, we're actually going to turn Evan into this Amy rig. So now Evan is Amy, and you can kind of see on the left of the screen are all these blend-shaped positions that are bouncing around with those Faceware values going up and down depending on which way he is, moving his mouth or his eyes or his eyebrows. And so you end up with this really cool real-time streamed data. And so with this data that's coming through here into Motion Builder, you could stream it into Unity, into Unreal. Some of these tools have plugins directly for Maya. But we like to manage everything here in Motion Builder where we can kind of combine each of those 3 technologies together.
Evan, what's it like being a woman?
Oh, it feels great. Yeah, a lot of estrogen. It's quite the experience, I must say.
All right, masks off. We have this glass pane. We have Evan controlling the camera remotely with an iPhone through the RS2.
And this is what I look like.
Yes. Which is interesting, because I was talking to Isaac Spiegel at Frame Store in Chicago. We're going to be doing an interview with Isaac soon. Really awesome guy. And he came to school, and you and him were like buddies, right?
Yeah, so Isaac's a really great guy. He went through the VFX program. I was going through the Houdini technical side of the program while he was going through the compositing side. And so we could trade off where I could do some renders, hand him some EXRs, and we could go out and like shoot a shot and then have him do the comp work. And so there's a couple silly clips in his old reel. If it's still up there, I don't know if he still keeps it up, but there's some.
I think I did look at his reel. We're going to look at it.
There's some parking garage shots that I remember going out and be like, all right, so this is how we match move, and then here's some renders I made of, some 3D objects. Put those in your scene, and yeah, there was a good group going at Purdue at that time of people and kind of settling in their own specializations, figuring out what they wanted to do. I was very VFX heavy, and as much as I love Houdini, I still use it every day for work, but I really like the real-time side of things. It's a different type of creative problem. So kind of taking a lot of those technologies and data management or like mesh reduction, stuff like that is a pivotal point to the real-time tech that we do here that I kind of fell in love with.
That's what we're starting to see VFX artists sort of begin to do that. They kind of like, I'm jumping into this real-time, this hybrid that's being built right now. And right now we're awaiting this see-through VR system, $3,000 from Apple. In my opinion, I think for $3,000, if they took $1,000 and changed the phone industry, they better really do something if they're asking for $3,000 for this next toy. Is there any thoughts on predictions for this crazy toy that might be coming out soon?
Nothing crazy. I think they might up the game a little bit with like choosing some different sensors or kind of committing to one piece of technology. I know that across the VR, AR device spectrum, you have a lot of people who want to focus in on one part of the tech and make that part their good quality thing. Like HTC Vive, where you have these tethered, really high quality devices that can do high powered rendering, you're offloading that to a PC. So they can commit to higher quality display panels and higher refresh rates. But the mobile devices can't afford that level of hardware and performance in that standalone device. So they commit in other solutions like inside-out tracking, where you can still walk around. It's not the same fidelity because you need a bunch of cameras around the device to see the world. But I think Apple will make a good jump, or at least move us forward another step in that race of seeing where VR, AR, and these sensors can go.
Did you want to say anything as we kind of close up for the Envision Center?
So at the center here, we're an academic group on campus. We employ anywhere from currently 15, we've gone all the way up to 30 students, undergraduate and graduate. So if you're in the area and that's something that you're looking to get into, is that kind of real-time development work. We're constantly hiring and always having people come in and out of semester to semester or graduating and moving on. So a lot of the projects and things we're working on now we're pretty excited about, and our project numbers have never been higher than ever before. So it's
even in a pandemic.
Even in the pandemic, things jumped up for us. We were really lucky on the timing. We had started in that previous fall working on a partnership in the College of Engineering, where they have some super expensive equipment that's really dangerous to operate that students will do labs on. And they asked us, is there a way we could digitize this that retains what we're doing with it and why we're doing it, so that way we don't need someone in the infrastructure there to safely keep it updated and working with it and safe for students. And that put us in the perfect position that we were deploying that when everyone started to go remote. And so that kind of turned into a really good news bite of, hey, we're making virtual labs, and then everyone's like, we got to make our labs virtual, what do we do? And so our business just went way up.
Keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah, and so we're very happy with what we do, and I'm very fortunate with the technology we get to experiment with and how public we get to be with it. I know that some companies, can't really say what they're doing until the project's over, and then when the project's over, you got very special limitations around what you can say you did or what you can show. And so I'm in that very fortunate position to get to experiment with mocap, but then also tell everyone what I'm doing and kind of share it, so that hopefully we can, with this idea of virtual production, kind of move that forward in the public eye, get more people with creative minds, their hands on the software and tools. But yeah, thanks for coming down here and visiting.
Thanks again, Drew, for showing us. This school's awesome. I go to it. They didn't pay me to come down here and talk about this. I just thought it'd be really cool to show this Envision Center. And again, it just all the passion that I see at this school is just, I just got out of an experimental animation class with one of our teachers, Andrew Buchanan. It was just an awesome class, really getting into the scientific approach to animation. So again, I hope to do more tours and hopefully get more into Purdue and all the different, different exciting things that happen here. So thanks again, Drew.
Yeah, thanks for coming down.